Welcome back to Self-Care is My Job. I'm Samantha Long, and I am a somatic self-care coach. I'm a yoga instructor, and I'm all about helping you feel again, connect to your truth, and start living in alignment with who you really are and what you really love. And I'm here with Matthew Smith.
Hey everybody,
Hi.
how's it going?
We finally got together to chat. So Matthew
Yeah,
Smith is a therapist. He is, I believe, a co-founder of the Sanctuary, and we're going to talk about what all those things are. You're also a breathwork facilitator, which I'm loving too. Can't wait to get to one of your workshops at some point when I have a block of time.
I hear you.
But yeah, tell us, I won't intro you. Tell us who you are, what you do, what you love, what's going on.
I mean, you kind of just said it in a nutshell, but yeah, I'm a licensed therapist. I am a breathwork instructor, facilitator, and I call myself a community organizer. I guess that's the title I'm using for what I do at the Sanctuary, at the nonprofit space. Those are like the three titles I kind of go by. So you did a very good job. Of
Cool.
kind of putting it in a nutshell. Yeah, I love working with people on an individual level. I definitely have a passion for group work, whether that is healing work, like I'm a group therapist as well, or whether that is getting people together to do fun things like our poetry circle that meets every week at the Sanctuary, or the concerts we run. I like bringing groups of people together and having one-on-one sessions. Yeah, I love it all. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're a healer, right? Like you have that I have too, right? That it's like one of those moments where you're like, I want to help people. And I felt like that since I was a kid. But I wanted to mention too about the sanctuary. So if you can tell us a little bit more about that, I'll just mention the fact that at least I got to make it there once. I'm excited at least that I've done that. But that was for the songwriting circle, which I just found I was like so present sitting there because like when you just drop in and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, like I am very much here right now, because you can't help but be, because this is all original stuff that people are performing, and you're not comparing it to something else. It's not up for interpretation or anything. You can just let it wash over you, because it's not a cover of a song or like being compared to something else. I was just like obsessed with that, and it wasn't just because I came and my friend's band performed. All of them were I was so grateful to have experienced that.
That was a really good night. We do that once a month. Just kind of get three songwriters up there to have a good time, to hang out, to talk. Yeah, it's always a good time.
Yeah, but tell us about the sanctuary if you're willing, a little
Yeah, of
bit.
course. Yeah, the Sanctuary is a community hub offering a home for social connection and creative expression. That's our mission statement. We are a physical space that is just constantly trying to find ways to help people connect with each other, help people express themselves creatively. So we do a mix of artistic programs and wellness programs. The past year or so, we've been leaning more heavily towards the arts programs. We definitely try to cater to what is working. We opened a few years ago with the history behind the mission is the power of being a part of something bigger than yourself, being a part of a community. And not that it's even just a healing tool, but it's actually the lack of community is the source of the problem. In my therapy practice, I specialize in addiction, depression, and anxiety, which, as we all know, are major killers in the US and also the most diagnosed mental illnesses. And I mean, just the more I learn about it, the more I'm seeing that loneliness and disconnection is one of the major causes of those three illnesses. And so if we can help people find a space where they could just be in community with each other, help them express themselves, whether that's some of our more wellness programs, somatic healing, our discussion circles, breathwork ceremonies, or whether that is just like spending a week writing a poem about grief and then showing up and reading it, and people aren't yelling at you and critiquing you, they're just telling you what moved them in your poem, providing that space for people. And we're constantly evolving and growing. I think that kind of nutshells it a little bit.
And the space is so awesome and welcoming, and you guys
Thank
are
you.
too. What was the other guy's name? I forgot his name. That
We
was
have a
there. He was
we
like
got a few
MC.
guys.
He was like emceeing. He was like an older
Oh,
gentleman.
Jo. His name's
That's
Jo.
it. That's why I'm like I couldn't remember. Such a
Yeah.
sweetheart. Oh my God. Yeah, we had the best time. The energy is just perfection there, honestly, and I can't wait to go back. And just piggybacking off of what you were saying, it's one thing to gather people. Obviously, you're creating an opportunity to get together and either engage in the arts and just like listen to music or just sort of observe and immerse yourself, or to actually partake. Either one, I feel like, is going to be beneficial. But in other words, it's one thing to create space for people to come together and be together and just engage in something and have fun. Like, I love the fact that you mentioned fun before, because I think we forget how important emotionally and mentally it is to just seek out joy in its purest way. But again, I think that one of the things that happens is we kind of lose connection to what brings us joy. As you can imagine, I work with mostly women, and I always kind of reference this, but it's really everywhere. It's not just with women. Like, there is this sort of people-pleasing, self-sacrificing patterning that we've all taken in different forms. For women, of course, a lot of times it's about caretaking and making sure everybody else's emotional state is in order before your own. So if you continue on that pattern for most of your life, say I'm working with a client and that client is, 45, and for, 15 years, she's been either prioritizing the emotional wellness and the mental state of her family or her kids, or a little bit of both, and everyone else involved, you literally lose the ability to know what brings you joy, because it's not something that you're experiencing that often. And even when you are experiencing it, sometimes it's suppressed and tampered down right away, because you have to pivot quickly into making sure it's not inconveniencing someone else, or it's not making someone else uncomfortable. And it isn't even necessarily about that whole self-sacrificing. Sometimes, even for men, we all learn the people pleasing. We all learn to put everybody else's emotional and mental state and comfort level in front of ours, because it's just become a thing. I think that that's part of why we lose connection to what really is bringing us joy. Somatically, I'll always bring it back to, as far as what's actually happening internally, what's coming up for you right now, right? The butterflies, that's one example of how you're going to know, oh, I like that thing. I want more of that. And if we're constantly having to put that feeling aside because we need to put something else, in front of it, we forget. So I only bring that up because I talk about joy all the time and fun, and it's so much more important to be able to seek that out. So you have these spaces that you can come and find that and practice that and be in that. But then you also have someone potentially who, like you said, feels really lonely. You have an invitation to come and gather. And then you have the added value, for lack of a better phrase, of practicing self-expression, so that that person potentially can learn how to feel seen and heard and acknowledged and recognized. Because, as we know, you can be in a room full of people and feel completely alone because you don't feel like you belong, or you don't feel like you're accepted. And that could be a real-time, present, actually happening thing, or it could be something that is living on inside of you. Either way, it doesn't matter, because you're feeling that, right? So I just love that you brought all of those things into play, as far as not only having a space where people can come and do what they need to do and be together and be in community, but practice that self-expression piece, because that's really the only way. I know it's hard sometimes for some people, but I find that for me, my experience was always, I literally need to practice expressing myself in all kinds of ways, whether it is creatively, like for singing. For me, people think you always sang, so it must be like so easy. No, absolutely not. Singing in front of people, but you take that awkwardness that you feel, and people are also feeling that just presenting themselves to a new group of people that they may or may not feel comfortable with, So I love how you're creating, spaces and opportunities for people to actually embody all of that and, hopefully integrate that it is safe to come into community and let yourself be seen and heard, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, none of it's original ideas, just definitely picking up on what I've learned, especially since you are opening a space. I always love talking about with other space holders. My inspiration for this really was fueled by a few different things, but especially, are you familiar with social prescribing, perchance? Yeah. Oh, okay, good, because not a lot of people are. I've talked to people who literally have been running spaces for years and just aren't like familiar with it. And I'm just like, not that everything has to be research based, but as a therapist, I'm supposed to only be using research based practices, which obviously the sanctuary is not therapy, but my mind goes there sometimes. And so when I learned about what they're doing with social prescribing over in Europe, I'm just like, okay, How can we make that happen here, even though we don't have government funding to do such things? And
Hmm.
so, originally when we first opened the space, I was hoping to have a more of a variety of things, and we're working on it. But the arts community has just grabbed onto our space so much in a great way that most of what we are doing today is arts, but we're doing it in a way that is tied into this social prescribing wellness world. Our poetry circle, we call it a circle for a reason. We sit in a circle so we can all look each other in the eye. There's no one up at a podium. We have rules about sharing, to share mindfully. After someone reads, we don't just automatically critique their poem and tear them down. We share what we resonated with, what we loved about it. And then if they specifically ask us for critiques, we give it in a loving way. But the point of us meeting up is not to be a workshop, but to be a poetry support community. The emphasis is on socialization more than it is on honing our craft. Well,
Right.
I can't speak for everyone. I'll speak for myself. I like to acknowledge that too. Like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants here.
Yeah.
That other
Yeah.
people that have done the work and research and shown how important social connection and community is.
Yeah. 100%. I'm going back to reading Stephen Porges's work, for example,
Not
on
familiar with
polyvagal,
him. Oh, polyvagal theory? Yeah.
polyvagal theory, which I know has had some critiques and some adjustments and shifts over the time,
I'm
right?
very vaguely familiar with polyvagal theory. That's a little pun. I know the gist of it, but please keep going.
Yeah, no, so essentially drumming it down simply for the purpose of this conversation right now. It's really about how your parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest state of your nervous system is activated based on safe social interaction. And that the whole social engagement concept obviously can be linked to that whole social prescribing conversation where medical systems are actually prescribing arts, cultural, and social, I'm probably missing something, or nature, all into that category of social prescribing, because all of those things can have an effect on our nervous system. Again, also not a medical doctor over here, not a therapist, not going
But
to
hey, look,
all of
it
it.
doesn't. I feel like when I got out of school for therapy, I was big on I can't say anything that's not backed by
Yeah.
science. But we are powerful beings, and we know intuitively what helps us. I didn't need to wait until a book told me that social connection helps me
Right.
before I started going to support groups, before I started calling people. I
Hmm.
remember specifically one guy I was talking to who had what I wanted when I was in my healing journey. And I was like, oh man, people aren't calling me to hang out, this and that. And he's like, brother, you are at a low point in your life. You don't really have much to offer people right now. But there's a lot of people out there that you admire. Why don't you pick up the dang phone and call them? Why don't
Hmm.
you call 3 people a day for the next week and then call me at the end of the week and tell me if you're still feeling lonely? And I was like, whoa, that's what helped me. It wasn't the research, which I learned later
Right.
on. So
Right.
like, yeah, it doesn't always need to be so like how long did we know that nature is a powerful healer before science backed it in like
Right.
what I think 2017 is when they first started to say that nature therapy was really helpful. We knew long before that. You know what I
Right.
mean?
I also think that there's something to be said about our capacity, just based on lifestyle, to drop in and notice how important those things are. Because
Mm.
we might have known, but you know what? We might have lost, just back to what I was saying before, we might have lost connection to how good, oh, yes, like I always feel so much better after I go for a walk and get some fresh air. But if we're moving 90 miles a minute through life and we don't have the, ability to slow down and notice like the shift that you had when you went for that walk or when you took that yoga class and you're just on to the next thing and the next thing, like in my classes, for example, like I often like, do the whole typical roll the shoulders back, all of that. But I'm always talking about like, can we lean back into supporting something? Because you know what? We are literally like, our body is just like always forward, 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 next, 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 more and more and more. What if we really embodied pull back? Because at
Mm.
that point, but again, it's just an example. It's just one way of so many ways to slow down, to practice slowing down. But I feel like we might actually lose that connection to notice that shift that is happening when we're out in nature, when we're engaging with arts, and not make that connection. So I'm constantly a broken record with my clients, with my friends. Bask in it, slow down. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. I'm an Italian Jew from Brooklyn. I can't slow down sometimes. And I'm very type A, and I'm that Virgo, very 3D, get it done, physical type of energy. But at the same time, of course, I say it on repeat to everyone else so that I can hear it myself too. If we can't have those drop-in moments and just kind of practice slowing down and being present in our bodies, of course, we don't really integrate how beneficial this stuff is because we just moved on that quickly. So I feel that, I really do. And I have been definitely exploring a little of that social prescribing concept too, as far as the similar things that we're trying to build here, and making sure that people understand. I'll just throw this out there too. There's that concept, or I should say that last year, over the past like 4 years actually, I was coordinating this festival called Healing with Heart. And it was like this interesting, I'm just putting this out there because you brought it up, and it's sometimes easy to talk about these things in, like you said, in terms of like, I read this or this person studied this. But the reality was, of everything that I noticed putting together, putting on a festival for 4 years that was incorporating arts and wellness. So it was called Healing with Heart. We're actually trying to slot it in for this year somewhere. The calendar's filling up. But I had reservations about there being too much going on. Wellness demonstrations, therapeutic art demonstrations, sensory area, some wellness vendors, live music. And every single year I would have this, when you're putting something on and you have the second guessing that's happening. And I'm like, it's too much. Again, typical limiting belief systems that are going to come up of like, oh, this is too much. Nobody's going to get it. But the reality was, every single time, it was more about the community and gathering people than anything else. The fact that people could just come and explore and have these connections and learn from people and have these drop-in moments. It didn't have to be that they came and they did everything and they hit with everyone and they clicked with every modality. No, I just want you to come and have an experience. Whatever your experience is, that means that you dropped in and you were present and you were engaging in arts or wellness or a little bit of both for a little while. And maybe it was hopefully an intentional drop-in of, and how did that feel for you? One of the things that we have going on through Heart House, our nonprofit that's all about arts and wellness, is one of our first events called Heart Gallery Night. And we're going to be doing a very immersive version of a gallery. We're going to have live music, we're going to have beverages, we're going to have food, we're going to have at least 3 or 4 artists like live creating. So my idea with that was also to demystify the artist situation. This is a person, they're just creating right now, right before your eyes. They're just vulnerable enough to let you see it. You have the capacity to create things too. That whole idea of, I don't have a creative bone in my body. I just want people to understand, like they'll sit and they'll talk with the artist who's like actually creating live. But my point is to say that we're also going to have, and again, it could land or it could not with some people. I have no control over that, but we're also going to have like this sort of invitation, a few prompts to check in and notice, like, how did that make you feel? Was there a piece of art in this room or something sensory-wise in this room, in this space, that really gave you those butterflies or really made you feel excited? Or was it something that was more neutral and gave you pause and made you slow down and made you think? Sort of an invitation of, okay, what's going on? Whether it's mentally, emotionally, somatically, what's happening right now? And again, we have no control. Like sometimes it's just going to be joy. Like you just came and you just enjoyed yourself. I'm down for that too. Like eat, drink, be merry, do those things. But there's another layer there where we can use all of these experiences to really drop in and have a present moment and engage with community members, engage with art. And I always use that word. Of course, the yoga teacher is always going to use the word practice. We're practicing being present because we could do that by engaging in the arts and having meaningful conversations. You feel that. Anyway, that was a very long-winded way to explain my version of the social prescribing aspect.
Yeah, I hear that. Definitely resonate with just the need to let go of control, especially when working with a community space, because I definitely have had to, especially when it comes to creating it as a nonprofit. I believe in the spirit of nonprofits of they are designed when you have a board set up where everyone has an individual vote, where it's not just you anymore. And some nonprofits work differently. Like, I'm not going to call anybody out, but I know some nonprofits that they just get their friends to create a board and then it's one person leading it. And then the board is just for paperwork. But really having a true community space where a board, everybody has a vote, and then you're even bringing the community non-board members into it and letting them kind of guide where things go. And with that, some events are going to bomb and no one's going to show up and there's going to be money wasted. And some things are going to thrive that you didn't expect to. And just kind of letting the universe or God or whatever kind of guide it through the community. Also, something's been on my mind a little bit in this conversation, the idea of if it's okay to pivot a tiny bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
I personally don't resonate with the term healer simply because I don't know, like, are we, and I do believe that there are some people that are like true conduits, like my therapist, for example, she's an energy worker like no other. I've never seen someone do energy work like her. So she truly has this gift. But even then, is she a vessel or is she the healer? I'm not sure. At least for me, I like this idea that I learned in social work school. I'll keep it on me. Instead of viewing myself as the one doing the healing, can I view myself as empowering somebody to heal themselves?
Hmm.
You know? Because I don't know about you, but like it doesn't matter if I'm on my best day bringing my best tools. If someone's not willing to use them,
Hmm.
then it doesn't matter. And then obviously this is more leaning towards social work than coaching and whatnot. But I think a safety net reason that they put that in place is then if somebody like doesn't use the tools or that tool didn't work for them, it's not on me if I wasn't able to heal you. It's okay, like I'm just here to empower you to use your own tools. If that tool doesn't work for you, what else is going to work for you? For example, for me, I love ceremonial breath work. I think it's so healing. I have had many people that don't like it. I've had people halfway through a ceremony take off their headphones, get up and walk out of the room. So it's just something I was thinking about. I'd love your take on that. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I know that I used the word healer earlier, but at the same time, I couldn't agree with you more.
And I'm okay
Um,
with you disagreeing too.
I totally agree with you. The word that was coming up when you were explaining that was actually facilitator, and I keep using that myself. And it's great that you're saying that too, because I restructured all of my offerings because, again, just year after year, growth after growth, I'm dropping in more and more to what feels right and what
Mm.
doesn't. So I will notice now where I'm either overextending myself, right? Or I'm trying too hard to have this impact where it's how much real weigh in do I have about what that impact is? I'm
It can be
not the
so
one doing it.
difficult.
I really did. I had to sit and reconnect. Again, I'm in a different place just like anybody else. I'm in a different place now than I was 1 or 2 years ago. And there's a whole side of that too, of we have this, or at least for me, where I'll have this little voice in my head that goes, it's flaky of you to keep changing your offerings and changing your schedule and what's available and stuff like that. This whole little storyline that comes up. But if I'm not the same person and I'm not resonating and it's not landing for me the same way that it did a year ago, then so be it. My offerings need to feel good and feel safe for me, just as they do for someone who would be attracted to those offerings.
Uh,
But I feel the same way, and I just adjusted everything where I actually really would prefer to lead, for example, a deeper embodiment type of class monthly than offer 3 yoga classes a week and see who shows up, for example. I want to be able to guide people in an experience and then simply give them an invitation to drop in that way, and then maybe some light guidance on meaning making and a deeper understanding of it, and then what comes out of that, right? So
mm.
I couldn't agree with you more that I just want it to be more. That's how I start, like how I started introing myself, even like I just want to help you remember how to feel again.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah, just I don't know if you struggle with that besides just the language of it, more the intention behind it. And I've struggled with this a bit in my career, but I think I'm getting better at it. The clients or the humans we work with who just are not getting better, whether it's they're not willing to do the work or they're doing the work and not getting the result that we wanted them to get or that they wanted to get. And how do we not take it so personally?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be difficult. I mean, I don't know about you, but, I got my feet wet in substance use, in
Mhm.
detoxes and rehabs. So you'd have somebody you were working with who leaves, and then a day later they're dead,
Yeah.
And so it's like, whoa. At first, I would question myself of, am I a good enough
Yeah.
facilitator, healer, whatever word we want to call it? It can be really difficult to let go of the reins,
Completely.
realize our illusion of control that we don't actually have.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too. Like we don't, there are so many aspects of of a person's life that we don't have the capacity to really drop into and connect with. And I always, this is what's coming up as you're saying that, it's back to that sense of support and belonging and a support circle. So yes, you have your practitioners and your facilitators and your therapists who are ideally a part of your, mental support system. But I feel it's so important outside of that, what type of real, true connection and deep, safe relationships are there. But then, especially when it comes to addiction, I can mostly only speak from experience because I don't work with people who are struggling with addiction. I speak from personal experience though, because my father is an alcoholic my entire life and he is in recovery at the moment. But you don't know, it's back and forth all of the time. And I can laugh about it only because I have very strong boundaries. And it's something that I, have had to deal with from being a child. But, like I'm comfortable leaning into that conversation because I see that as one of those so nuanced, multi-layer mental health, struggles, addiction, because you have so many pieces of that. You have the connection piece. There's so much out there, so much information about there that connects the origin sort of root of addiction to this deep-seated sense of disconnection from everyone else. You have that, you have trauma, you have a chemical dependency, you have stigmatization of the disease of alcoholism and addiction itself. There's shame. It's so nuanced. So, again, whether this, whether this is, helpful in, sort of the deburdening of the therapist or the facilitator or the support system, because it's just, or it's, making a conversation worse, but it's in so many cases, that's just an example. It's just so nuanced. For example, and I can talk about it from that personal perspective, or like I've said, I work mostly with women. So much of what happens is about their romantic partner or their spouse, right? In that
Mm-hmm.
relationship. And we have no control, even them, right? Like, of course, I have no control over what the husband is going to do, just to be frank, right? And what their past is and what their experience is, what their reaction is going to be to my client who's now, trying to finally, state her needs over years of not being able to do that. There is no control that I have over that. There's no control that she even has over that,
Yeah.
real control. So I always, and it's funny because even with my clients, I'll be like, you don't want to hear this, like, you don't want to hear this, but you have no control over that. It's such a hard pill to swallow. I think that personally, it's almost like what's coming up for me as I'm talking about this is like this belt chart or whatever the hell we're calling this, where it's like the tension and the anxiety and the resistance around that concept of you can't control what anyone, even when it comes to my father and the addiction we've had to deal with our whole lives, I have no control. And you'll tighten up. That's why I'm mentioning like the escalation of the control that you're trying to have over a situation.
Mm.
And you tighten and you try and you set ultimatums and you say things that you think are going to make a difference around whatever's going on in this relationship with someone. And I'm almost feeling that tension rises, and it takes, again, just from personal experience, there is a point, I think, where once you can really, really integrate that you don't have control, because everything is relationships, whether it's with community or one-on-one. It comes right back to what we were talking about, that social engagement, that sense of belonging. It's rooted in our basic needs, right, are rooted in that. So my point being, I think for me, integrating that everybody is on their own journey, it's not an easy pill to swallow. It's something where you really want to have control, because then I feel a false sense of safety because I have control over something or some conversation. We end up being passively manipulative. We don't realize we're being that way because we want the trajectory of that relationship to go a certain way. I'm really scratching the surface over here of that spot where I actually could take solace in the fact that I don't have control. It actually is soothing to me versus creating me to contract and try to control further. I don't know if I don't know if that's landing at all. But I think you have to go through experiences over and over and over again in your personal life in an intentional way and with support before you really integrate the truth of it. Now, whether it's my relationship, whether it's, my father, like whatever it is, it's actually about me. Everything, all I can do is control what I say and what I do. I can't control what somebody's going to feel, how somebody's going to feel about it. If I'm going to disappoint someone, you can live your whole life if you want to, trying to make sure that you don't disappoint someone and that you don't offset someone else's mental state. I can also be very personal and frank, even in our household and with my partner. Like, he struggles so deeply with mental health sometimes. And so what you do, you want to control, you want to be like, okay, I know what we can do, especially, having some level of skills, right? Some level of knowledge around this. I can do this. Oh, we can do this. We want to steer the wheel a little bit, but we really only have control over what we can do and how we respond in a relationship. I guess similar to a client relationship.
Mm-hmm. I hear you.
Yeah, it's tough. It is tough. And I'm glad you mentioned the ceremonial breath work. And I just want to say this. You mentioned you have a therapist who's also an energy healer, and you also are a therapist that also is multimodality, right? You have these other offerings. I just love to see that. I just love to see that there is either energetic or somatic piece to the offering. Because, even if you disagree, I would love to have that moment for a sec here with you. My personal past, with traditional therapy, as you can tell, I can talk circles around a concept. And so talk therapy, I should say, is tricky for someone like me. I can just continue on the same storyline I've been telling myself about a situation forever and ever and ever, and never drop in here unless I'm guided to really what's really happening and having some type of actual presence with it instead of just going down that rabbit hole again and again and again in that storyline. So first saying, I think it's beautiful and so appreciated when you have these other modalities that you bring in as the therapist, but also just wondering your take on that.
I have to be careful with that. Again, whatever we do as therapists needs to be evidence-based. And if not, we could lose our license. And if we lose our license, that's obviously a huge issue. If I lose my license, yes, I could still do life coaching work. But I specifically got into the therapy realm because I'm not much of a business-minded person. And I knew if I went the life coach route, I'd have to build a business. I'd really have to sell myself,
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with that. I have friends who are life coaches who do that. I have friends who are therapists. I have friends who are therapists who still run life coaching businesses on the side so they can do non-evidence-based but still very powerful things. For example, with me, I have to be careful with breathwork techniques that I have at the go, research ready to back up what I'm doing. But for example, and this isn't to throw shade on any therapist, I don't even want to get super specific because I don't want to
I know, yeah.
insult anybody. But I know therapists that are doing things in sessions that if the licensing board, whether they're a social worker or a counselor or a psychologist, if their specific licensing board knew what they were doing, they would be in trouble. And if one of their clients was to have a bad reaction to something they were doing, as that happens, and they were to file a complaint against their therapist, that therapist could lose their license. I don't even want to get specific because I don't want to insult anybody. For example, if I was doing cognitive behavioral therapy, the most researched friggin' modality there is for therapy, and someone had a bad reaction and complained about me to the board, I'm fine. I used an evidence-based practice. If you had a bad reaction to it, I'm very sorry, but that's not on me, I'm not a lawyer, but in a nutshell, that's my take on it. So just having to be a little bit careful there. There was another thought I had on this. Oh yeah, I guess my thought was for you, I know that you're very into somatic work. Have you been able to do a full breath work ceremony before?
Yeah, I have
Okay,
in the past with other facilitators, and it's been amazing. My somatic coach is a Kundalini breathwork facilitator, among other things. She's a professional dancer. She does a lot of things and offers, a lot of different types of somatic modalities through that. But mostly, I've done Kundalini breathwork with her, or versions of that.
Okay,
not ceremonial breathwork, as you mentioned.
It's a whole different ballpark. I highly recommend, because I very much view breathwork in 3 genres. There's calming breathwork.
Mm-hmm.
There's the active breathwork, which encompasses some kundalinis, I guess I would consider under that umbrella. Yeah. And there's ceremonial, transformational, holotropic style breathwork. That for me, it's a whole different game. I don't know. It's very interesting.
I
Um,
am excited to try. I have to get it on my calendar. Um,
yeah, yeah. I just did some active breath work before we hopped on this,
mhm,
and it's nice. It's a really good reset. It does slightly get you into that non-ordinary state of consciousness,
mhm.
um, and purges the nervous system when doing active breath work, like Kundalini breath work. But something about ceremonial breath work, it's just a whole different thing. I don't know what it is. It's Yeah,
So
I highly
what's on,
recommend.
I've seen the images, so I'll just go ahead and ask, what's on the headphones? When, because
Yeah, yeah. So ceremonial breath work, I'm not sure with each facilitator is different, but
yeah.
almost always with ceremonial breath work, there is music that is designed to help deepen the experience. Some people with active breath work, like Kundalini breath work, are using that as well.
Yeah,
I'm not, I'm,
we use music as well, but
yeah, yeah.
not
So
as the base, not as the focus. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So just adding that modality in there, I think really deepens it. Most facilitators are just playing music over speakers, like PA speakers, and then projecting their voice loudly, or if it's a bigger room, having a microphone
Hmm.
or a headset mic. And I'm not the first one to do it, so I'm definitely not claiming that. But in ceremonial breath work, a lot of emotions come up, and especially in the type that I do. I was in my training, I offer a few tools to help push you. So, for example, we'll take a deep breath in if I'm doing group breath work or even individual breath work. We'll take a deep breath in, we'll do a loud sigh. We'll take a deep breath in a few minutes in and we'll laugh, like to shake up
Hmm.
the energetic body.
Hmm.
About when we're really at the peak of the ceremony, we'll take a deep breath in, we'll scream at the top of our lungs. And then throughout the whole ceremony, a lot of people have their breakthrough where they are uncontrollably crying or
Hmm.
uncontrollably laughing
Hmm.
or screaming and just like letting it out. And so for some people, that can be hard to do in a group setting. So having them have headphones on where the music is playing and I have my microphone so I could like whisper and like get that ASMR voice. It deepens the experience for the client, a little sensory deprivation. And then also in group settings it enables them. By the time we get to the peak of a ceremony and we're screaming, the music's so loud that you can't even hear yourself screaming. It's just a somatic experience.
Hmm.
So yeah, I've done a lot of breath work with and without headphones. The headphones I feel like really deepens the experience.
I love that. That's why I asked, because I assumed that it was just like everything coming through, closing yourself off, making it a little bit more of a safe space to have the release.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In
because
fact,
I.
you're a music person, so you might understand this. Not everyone would. I got some feedback from some people who have been doing breath work with me for a while, where when I switched from speakers to headphones, they were like, I love the immersive experience, but I can't feel the speakers anymore. You know, how speakers like, you could
Mm,
feel it.
yeah,
So in the sanctuary, I don't know if you remember, we have two huge subwoofers.
yeah.
They're like fridge size subwoofers. So I route the music to the headphones, but I also route the bass frequencies to the subwoofers,
Oh my God.
and I turn them up so
Oh
that
my
while
God.
you're laying on the floor, the subwoofers, like the bass drum and the bass, are shaking your body. So it's
The somatic
physically,
shakeout. Yes.
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my God.
I nerd out about sound stuff, so I invested in some really quality headphones with a high frequency range
Yeah.
and quality audio, and then also getting the shaking of the subwoofers as well. And then I bring in aromatherapy as well, and a little bit of coaching. So I'm trying to give people the deepest experience that I can offer in order to give them the best chance of having that breakthrough. Because
Hmm.
I do believe, I don't know if you agree with this, but I do love talk therapy. But with certain modalities like ceremonial breath work, we are able to induce a breakthrough that might have taken a really long time to get through and integrate, and we can do it in a quick period of time.
Hmm.
And so the preparation needs to be there, the willingness needs to be there, the setting needs to be ideal. But if you get the right container, the right person at the right time with the right modality, they can have a major breakthrough. I've had people in ceremonial breath work talk to God. I've
Hmm.
had people talk to dead relatives,
Yeah.
go back to traumatic moments where they were abused as a child and just heal the inner child in one session. Of course, integration's a part of it. So I'm very much a nerd about breathwork, if you can't tell by my ramble.
I love that. No, I'm glad that you said all of that because it shows the intentionality of what you're offering. And yes, I'm the same way. I'm like, I can nerd out on nervous system and physiology and all of this shit all day. But I love that, again, you're so intentional about the experience, and it just speaks to what we were saying before. You're doing the best of your ability to help this facilitation, to help this experience be what it needs to be so that the person can have their experience, whatever it is. And if all those things align, yeah, it could be really major. I just wanted to ask, we're going to wind down in a second anyway, but I have to just ask this. I think a lot of people might either be like reluctant based on seeing like more deep and intense emotional releases that do happen in these type of settings. First of all, in your opinion or from your perspective, what is actually happening when you have that, whether it's a screaming, a laughter, crying, whatever type of more visceral response is happening there? Like, what is actually happening from your perspective? And also, what would you say if somebody was listening to this and they're fearful of that type of thing happening if they were to join?
Yeah. Are you asking scientifically what happens, or...
However you feel like answering.
So for those who would be watching, when we're doing calming breath work, we're tricking our bodies and minds to go into our parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system. Just like when you see someone sleeping and they're breathing slowly. You obviously know this, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
When we speed up our breath, which is ceremonial breath work, where we're speeding up our breath, and then we're using screaming and laughter and sighing and using evocative music, we are trying in ceremonial breathwork to trigger ourselves into the sympathetic nervous system, into the opposite, into a controlled fight or flight. And when that happens, a lot of times I view it as more of a spiritual practice because there's really no way of scientifically describing it. But sometimes things come up. I've had people that were like, I just needed to cry for 30 minutes and just let it out. My body needed to let that out. Or yes, I have had people who have had visions where they truly believed that they talked to God or talked to their dead relative, or even though they knew it wasn't true, they were able to go back to their childhood self and heal a wound. I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah.
But essentially, yes, if you are interested in ceremonial breathwork, know that it is designed by nature to throw you into your sympathetic nervous system to help you purge and heal. If that scares you, I would definitely recommend reaching out to myself or somebody else if you're still interested to ask more questions. But ultimately, like, there has to be a willingness to go into this with an open mind and an open heart. That being said, ceremonial breathwork is a lot of times related to medicine ceremonies, like plant medicine, psychedelics. The difference here is you're in complete control. So I know in my ceremonies, like, I teach you the fast breathwork, but we also start out with calming breathwork to ground you. And then at any point throughout the ceremony, I'm giving suggestions on what to do to go deeper, but you can always go back to a calm breathwork. So you have the gas and the brakes the whole time. But yeah, it's not recommended for anybody who is currently experiencing a lot of panic attacks or anxiety attacks. You do need to be in a bit of a stable place to do ceremonial breath work. Not stable like everything's perfect, but if you are in a crisis, ceremonial breath work, I wouldn't recommend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But again, I do ceremonial breath work with people in rehabs. You know, who have been clean for like 20, 30 days. They're stable enough. And I tell them about this. And the ones that opt in, a lot of them have beautiful experiences. On the rare occasion, there are people who freak out and they need to come out of it and leave the room. It's rare, but it happens. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you for explaining that. And I think that goes back to what we were saying, that we don't have complete control. A lot of times, what's coming up for me as you're talking about that is so much of my training, whether it was yoga, somatics, physiology, was all trauma informed. And we talk about a lot of the things that you're referring to, making sure that people feel resourced, whether that is connecting to some type of safe or positive thought that they can always come back to so that they have that break that they can hit, and then also teaching them early on the calming breath so that they can come back to that. They have a little bit more control, and we want to make sure they're resourced. But at the same time, setting up a safe environment, like you said, but we actually don't have complete control over what's going to really trigger someone. And I don't know if you agree with me, I feel like sometimes we can't get to the growth that not all of us, but some of us are striving for until we push up against that trigger a little bit. In other words, if I, again, just speaking for myself, if my entire focus in all of my facilitation and all of my yoga classes and deeper embodiment classes was all about making sure that I am trauma sensitive and I never trigger anyone, and I never even put anybody in a situation where they feel like some type of emotional release coming up or there is some type of response, then if I'm being frank, I'm kind of doing a disservice, because it feels like not something needs to happen, but the idea is that is just another example of, okay, yes, feel this. There's knowledge here. There's growth here. There's information here.
I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, with breathwork, especially with breathwork, even though it's the most powerful modality that I offer, it is also the one that I can control the least.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I very much tell people to, if you want to set an intention to go into breathwork, but a lot of the times you might be guided elsewhere. Every breathwork ceremony is different. Even for myself, I've sat in ceremony a lot of times with breathwork, and sometimes I have a very huge, big breakthrough experience, and sometimes it's just a reset.
Yeah.
I can't control it with myself, and so how can I expect to control it even with somebody else when I can't even control it myself? So I'm just telling somebody how to breathe and some techniques to help them shake up the energetic body and throw them into that fight or flight state. But ultimately, I'm not telling them what to think. I'm not offering any tool, but here's how to breathe. And so I have to really check my ego and my expectations. I did a ceremony a month ago where I had 5 people and every single person had a breakthrough. It was amazing. I did a ceremony last week in a treatment center where people could probably most benefit from a breathwork ceremony. They're like trying to reshape their lives, and 1 or 2 people out of 10 had a breakthrough, and 2 people walked out of the ceremony. It's rare people walk out. Usually they'll at least sit there, but they were so annoyed by it that they just took their headphones off and left. So I really have to take my ego out of it and be like, spirit, whoever this is meant to help, even if it just helps 1 person in a group of 10.
Yes.
Great. If not, like, that's okay. I need to take my ego out of it. I'm just the vessel, so I have to keep that mindset. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm glad that we talked about that, because I think that needed to also be brought back to the forefront for me too. So I'm glad we went there.
Yeah.
Listen, this has been so awesome to have this chat with you. I'm glad we finally got it set up.
Me too.
I'm a big fan of all the things that you do, and now
Thank
I'm
you.
definitely getting over there for some breath work. I am
Awesome.
sold. So yeah, if there's anything else you want to throw out, or you want to, tell who's ever listening, now's your shot. We're also going to make sure that your information is in the description to make sure that if anybody wants to reach out to you and has more questions about your offerings and just in general, just to kind of go a little bit deeper, they can hopefully do that.
Yeah, of course. Definitely check out The Sanctuary, thesanctuarynj.com. And I'm currently taking on new clients for therapy and breathwork. I am in network with a few insurance companies, and I have a sliding scale for private pay. So if you're interested, please reach out to me. My website is matthewsmithwellness.com.
Beautiful. Yeah, we'll make sure everything is there. Thank you so much, Matthew. I'm sure we'll chat again real soon. But until
Thank you.
then.
Thanks for having me.